I never thought I would leave the organization where I had spent 10 years in such a manner. Daniel, the executive vice president, said, "Your severance pay comes out to $60 according to company policy," grinning smugly. I bowed deeply, swallowing the raging tempest of emotions inside of me. I get it. Then, in accordance with corporate policy, I will also step down. He was still in the dark. He was unaware of the impending catastrophe that would befall this business after I left. Thomas is my name. I am employed for a company that provides a video streaming service as an engineer. I joined 10 years ago, just following my high school graduation. The company's primary focus when I started was DVD rentals. Therefore, my first assignment was to update the customer system. I had no idea at the time that this business would eventually lead the way in video streaming. I currently play a key role in the company as the leader of the development and management of the video streaming platform. However, I always make an effort to remember where I came from. Happy morning. How is everything progressing? One of my teammates, David, hurried over as soon as he saw me enter the office. Good morning, Thomas. Yes, things are going well for the most part. Just a few items that I would like you to look at. All right, I'll check everything shortly. After a quick morning greeting, I went directly to my desk. Thomas, sorry to bother you while you're busy, but this part of the process is running behind. Reports continued to pour in. I bent to gaze at the computer screen on Olivia's desk as I listened to another report from my direct report. We'll see. Try using asynchronous processing for this portion of the code. Let's give this area top priority, and I'll assist as well. Despite my modest demeanor and slight awkwardness, I am confident in my technical abilities. My crew probably trusts me and follows my lead because of this. Thomas, thank you very lot. You're incredible. Thomas, we really rely on you. Come on now, let's stay focused and get to work. The corners of my own mouth lifted slightly as I saw Olivia and David beam. I stay grounded because of these little exchanges with them. However, I've been bothered by something lately. To be really honest, I'm starting to lose my patience. About a month ago, it all began. Mr. Robinson, the president of our organization, became ill and was admitted to the hospital. Daniel, the executive vice president, has been running the entire business ever since. And that has been a major issue for me. Thomas, are you seriously still using such an inefficient method? Out of nowhere, I heard Daniel's voice. He was standing there staring down at me with his typical derisive grin when I turned around. No, this is actually a solid method. It's speeding things up and reducing errors as well. I tried to respond calmly, but inside I was sighing endlessly. Whether he noticed or not, Daniel gave a snort. Well, maybe this is as far as someone with just a high school education can go. There are more intelligent ways to handle this, you know. He shrugged and gave a condescending smile. I'm sorry. I swallowed the words that rose to my throat and apologized instead. When Mr. Robinson was still around, Daniel never made such blatant sarcastic remarks. But now, this is the reality. Well, Mr. Robinson did say that even someone like you is necessary for this company. I don't understand it myself, but I suppose there's no helping it. With that, Daniel gave my work a disinterested glance and walked away. I returned to my desk and slowly let out the breath I had been holding in. I tried to refocus on my tasks, but Daniel's words kept echoing in my mind. Ever since Daniel took over in place of Mr. Robinson, exchanges like this have become part of my daily routine. Thomas, are you all right? David asked, his voice filled with concern. Yeah, I'm fine. No problem at all. I answered as calmly as I could, but deep down, I just wanted the situation to be over soon. Daniel's attitude wasn't just irritating. It chipped away at my focus. Thomas, if there's anything we can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask, Olivia said gently, clearly worried. David and Olivia, My direct reports are always on my side. That's exactly why I couldn't drag them into what was essentially a personal issue. Thanks, but really there's no need to worry. Come on, let's all get back to work. With those words, I encouraged the two of them and turned my attention back to the task at hand. Right now, all I could do was focus on my work. I had no choice but to endure until Mr. Robinson returned. Then one day, "Thomas, do you have a minute?" While I was working at my desk, Daniel's voice rang out suddenly. I looked up. His expression was even harsher than usual, so something was clearly wrong. "Yes, what is it?" I responded calmly, though unease was spreading inside me. Ignoring my nerves, Daniel began to speak rapidly, almost like he was unloading frustration. "That new personalized marketing system you're working on, the deadline's been moved up." "What?" "The deadline moved up." I was so shocked that I instinctively asked him again. Then, without missing a beat, I pushed back. "Daniel, that project is only halfway through development. Even being conservative, we're looking at another year. If we cut that short, just finish it in 6 months. "No excuses," Daniel cut me off coldly. 6 months? I was speechless. There was no way I could simply say yes to something so unreasonable. "That's just not possible, Daniel. It would seriously affect the quality of the product, and the burden on my team would be." "Quality? Burden?" Daniel scoffed. "Even someone with your level of education should understand. Speed is everything in business. Mr. Robinson isn't here. I'm the one in charge now. Your job is to follow orders." "But Daniel..." "Enough. This is final." I tried to argue, but Daniel's sharp glare shut me down. "If you can't do it, I'll find someone else. People like you are easy to replace," he sneered, the corners of his mouth curling cruelly. "You clearly lack the sense of responsibility a team leader should have, Thomas. I have no idea why Mr. Robinson thought so highly of you. But fine. Let's see what you can do now." "Understood." I nodded quietly, gathering my resolve. Daniel's smirking eyes bore into me, cold, almost as if he was hoping for me to fail. "Good. Then I'll be counting on you. I'd expect results in 6 months." He nodded with satisfaction and walked away. I sighed. I let out a deep breath. Completing the project in 6 months would require serious determination. But I had no choice. I had no choice but to do it. "Thomas, did something happen?" David asked, clearly worried. "Yeah, actually. The project I'm working on now, the deadline's been moved up. We only have 6 months left," I answered honestly. There was no point in hiding it from my team anymore. "What? 6 months?" David's eyes widened, his expression filled with confusion. Olivia, who had overheard us nearby, peeked over with concern written all over her face. "That's going to be really tough, isn't it?" "Yeah, but we have no choice," I declared firmly. Then I bowed my head in front of them. "I'm sorry. This is going to affect both of you as well. But I'll do everything I can to lighten the load, so I'm asking for your support." David and Olivia exchanged glances, then nodded as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "If you're asking, Thomas, then we're in. But please, Thomas, don't try to carry it all by yourself. If something happens to you, this company won't make it." "I know. Thank you." I bowed deeply once again. To live up to their trust, I had no choice but to see this impossible demand through. The next few months would be a battle. Every single day. From that day on, we stayed at the office even after sunset, glued to our screens. The clock had already passed 10 p.m., but no one showed any sign of leaving. Ever since Daniel gave that reckless order to shorten the project timeline, working late had become the norm. "Thomas, we've made it this far. What's next?" David asked, his voice heavy with fatigue. "Good work. We're on track. Next, let's move on to optimizing the database. If we get that right, we'll see a big improvement in response times. I gave David a light pat on the shoulder to encourage him. Thomas, I finished the section you asked me to handle. Can you check it? Yeah, I got it. You're making great progress. I'll take a look now, so go ahead and move on to the next task. Okay, will do. Olivia nodded without a trace of frustration in her voice. They were both giving it their all. That's why I had to push myself even harder. I stayed later than anyone else, wrote more code than anyone else, because that was all I could do right now. And finally, the day arrived. We had completed the new personalized marketing system. We did it, Thomas. Great job, Thomas. David and Olivia cheered. You both did an incredible job. I looked at them and bowed deeply, full of genuine gratitude. This project succeeded because of all your hard work. I could never have done it alone. Thank you for sticking with me. It's only because you let us, Thomas. That's right. It was a long road, but being able to finish it like this, I'm honestly moved. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes as she smiled, and I smiled back, giving a small nod. There were a lot of hard times over these past 6 months, but I'm truly glad we could share this moment together. Thank you, really. The mood in the office softened instantly. We would surely face new challenges ahead, but just for now, I wanted to savor this sense of accomplishment. All right, head home early today and get some rest. You've earned it. I said that to them with a smile and saw them off. Thank goodness. In the silence of the office, I sank back into my chair, letting my body rest against the backrest. I wanted to stay in this moment of fulfillment just a little longer. With the launch of this new personalized marketing system, we would be able to recommend the most suitable content to each customer based on their individual tastes and preferences. This would dramatically improve viewer satisfaction. The system had the potential to revolutionize the video streaming industry. We finally made it. I let out a deep breath, as if releasing all the struggles and hardships up to this point. The truth was that I had spent years researching and refining the technology behind this system. Since the day I joined this company after graduating from high school, this idea had quietly lived in the back of my mind. Now, it was finally becoming a reality. And with its implementation just around the corner, my heart was pounding with excitement. This is the moment my dream finally takes shape. A few days passed since that night of celebration with my team, and as the launch day approached, my anticipation grew stronger. But then, just as I was floating in that sense of accomplishment, it happened. Good morning. Huh. What's going on? I arrived at the office like usual, only to find it unusually noisy and chaotic. Ah, Thomas, something terrible's happened. As soon as they noticed I had arrived, David and Olivia rushed over to me in a panic. What is it? What happened? Well, your desk is gone. What? For a moment, I couldn't process what they were saying. What do you mean my desk is gone? I hurried over to the place where my desk had always been, and just as they said, there was nothing. The spot where I had worked for so many years had completely vanished without a trace. Why would something like this happen? I stood frozen, unable to believe what I was seeing. I couldn't begin to understand how this could be happening. Staring at the empty space where my desk once stood, my mind went blank. Just then, I saw Daniel walking into the office and slowly making his way toward me. He looked at me with a cold, flat expression and spoke without emotion. Thomas, now that the system is complete, there's no longer any need for someone like you. With only a high school education, you're fired. It felt like a blade of ice had pierced straight through my heart. Fired. I barely managed to get the word out. Why would you do this? The words wouldn't come out properly. Daniel, watching my confusion, let a cold smile creep across his face. This company can do just fine without you. In fact, it'll be better off. We don't need someone with your educational background hanging around here anymore. Wait, hold on. This is outrageous. My mind. Finally catching up to reality, my voice rose in protest. This is too sudden, and I haven't even done the handover. The project still needs final adjustments. We don't need your handover. Just return your computer. That's all. Daniel cut me off without hesitation. I was speechless. It felt like he was telling me all my efforts up until now meant absolutely nothing. Daniel, what do you mean by this? I don't accept it either. That's right. Without Thomas, this system never would have been completed. So, why are you firing him? David and Olivia stepped forward from beside me, raising their voices in unison. But Daniel didn't flinch. With a cold expression, he sighed and shook his head. Why? Thomas's role is finished. That's all there is to it. What? Daniel, this is completely unfair. You two are persistent. If you want to defy me, I can fire you as well. Go ahead and try. We're not afraid. Wait. Stop. I hurriedly stepped in to stop the two of them from confronting Daniel. I couldn't let them get dragged into this any further. David, Olivia, thank you, but please go back to your work. I'll handle the rest. They exchanged uncertain glances, clearly frustrated, but finally nodded. Understood, they said quietly and returned to their desks. I could see the bitterness written all over their faces. I'm sorry, David, Olivia. I watched their backs as they walked away, then slowly turned to face Daniel. Daniel, if you're going to go that far, fine. But promise me one thing. Do not subject my team to this kind of unfair treatment going forward. Oh yes. Don't worry. Those two went to decent universities. I'm sure they'll realize their mistake soon enough. Daniel gave a sly grin, watching my expression closely. He was probably hoping to enjoy the sight of me in despair. But I wasn't about to give him that satisfaction. I met his gaze head-on. Daniel, this is considered a company-initiated termination, correct? Then I trust you'll be paying my severance according to company policy. Of course, I'll pay it exactly according to policy. He responded with a look that practically said I was waiting for you to ask. A bad feeling crept into my chest. $60. That's your severance. What? For a moment, I couldn't believe my ears. But when I saw Daniel grinning at me, clearly watching for my reaction, I knew I hadn't misheard. You're joking, right? It's by the book. You should be thankful you're getting anything at all. Understood. There were 1,000 things I wanted to say. But more than anything, I didn't want to deal with him anymore. And if my team found out about this, they'd no doubt protest on my behalf. That would only drag them into this mess. This injustice was something I had to carry on my own. Holding back a flood of emotions, I bowed my head to Daniel. Then, I'll resign in accordance with company policy. Without saying another word, I returned to my now deserted area and quietly gathered the few personal items that remained. I never imagined I would leave the company I worked at for 10 years like this. Bitterness and emptiness swirled inside me. But I felt like I wasn't even allowed to express those feelings that day. I left the company, walking quickly through the city with heavy thoughts weighing down my chest, leaving without closure, overwhelmed by frustration and sorrow. Maybe I'll have a drink for the first time in a while. Wanting to clear my head, I stopped in front of a bar and pushed the door open. Welcome. Please take any open seat. The bartender greeted me with a warm smile. But I only gave a slight nod and sat silently at the corner of the counter. Then I ordered a drink. I usually avoided whiskey on the rocks. Certainly, the bartender, keeping his gentle expression, smoothly poured the whiskey into a glass filled with ice. Here you are. He placed the glass on the counter. Staring into the amber liquid, I downed it in one go. The strong alcohol burned my throat, sharp and unforgiving. For a brief moment, it felt like I was escaping from reality. Another, please. I handed back the empty glass and ordered a refill. After a few more drinks, my head began to feel foggy. The alcohol set in, and the events of the day started to feel like a distant dream. That was when it happened. I suddenly felt someone take the seat next to me, pulling my awareness back to reality. "Hey, are you Thomas by any chance?" Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice, and I looked up in surprise. There she was, Rebecca. She had been in the same class as me back in high school, and now she was sitting beside me. "Rebecca." I knew it. "It's really you, Thomas. It's been so long." She smiled brightly as I sat there frozen in surprise. "I can't believe we're running into each other here. It's been, what, since the reunion a few years ago?" "Oh, excuse me. Can I get a highball, please?" Rebecca placed her order with a friendly smile, then tilted her head slightly as she looked at me. "It's rare to see you drinking alone like this. At the reunion, you said you usually don't drink much." "Uh-huh. You've got a good memory. But today, I just needed a drink." I gave a tired chuckle and glanced at her. She furrowed her brow, clearly concerned. Did something happen? Rebecca leaned closer, peering at my face with worry. I hesitated for a moment, but after leading into the conversation like that, I couldn't bring myself to lie. Letting out a deep sigh, I decided to be honest. "I actually got fired today." "What? Fired? But you're one of the best engineers I know." "That makes no sense." Rebecca's eyes widened in shock, at a loss for words. Back in high school, the two of us often exchanged programming ideas, and she had always believed in my potential as an engineer. Well, a lot happened. I gave a wry smile and briefly explained the situation. I just finished developing a new system. It was finally taking shape. But Daniel, the executive vice president, hated me because of my education. In the end, that was the reason I got let go. That's so wrong. Truly awful. I know how hard you've worked, Thomas. Hearing those sincere words from Rebecca, who had always understood me, brought a deep sense of relief. Her kindness felt like it was melting away the stress that had been building up inside me. "Thanks, Rebecca. Talking to you helps. Really. Complain to me all you want. We've been friends since way back, so no need to hold back now." She smiled softly, took a sip of her highball, and let out a quiet breath. "So what are you going to do now? Have you found another job?" I fidgeted with my glass and shook my head. "No, not yet. Honestly, I haven't even started thinking about it. Everything happened so suddenly, I don't even know where to begin." "I see." Rebecca fell silent for a moment, thinking, and then suddenly lit up with an idea. "Hey, Thomas, why don't you come work at my company?" Her unexpected suggestion caught me completely off guard. I turned to her, stunned. "Wait, at your company?" "But of course, you don't have to decide right away. But with someone like you, Thomas, I'm sure my company would be more than happy to have you." As she spoke, she took out a business card and handed it to me. "I'll talk to my supervisors. Just think about it. If you're interested." "Thanks, Rebecca. I'll definitely consider it." "Take your time, no pressure." Her warm smile brought a comforting sense of familiarity, like something I hadn't felt in a long time. Deep down, I felt a flicker of hope, like a new path was beginning to open up. A few days later, I visited the company where Rebecca worked. It was in the same industry as my former employer, actually a direct competitor. Honestly, I had some hesitation at first, but considering where I stood now, I couldn't afford to let this opportunity pass me by. "Thomas, over here." As I entered the building's lobby, I saw Rebecca waving at me. She must have been waiting. "Rebecca." I started walking toward her, but she hurried over before I could take more than a few steps. "Good morning, Thomas. We've got a quick interview and a meeting scheduled, so come with me." "Sure, I'm in your hands." She handed me a guest badge, which I hung around my neck, and led me toward the meeting room. Our company is currently short on both engineers and programmers, so there's been a lot of excitement about bringing someone like you on board, Thomas. Honestly, today's meeting probably won't feel like an interview, and it'll likely move straight into contract discussions. I see. Her words brought me a sense of relief. I still carried the weight of everything that happened at my previous job. But here, maybe I could finally start fresh. Things moved quickly. After the interview and internal procedures, I was officially hired and immediately placed into a project. I was welcomed as a new member of the team, where I met a particularly young programmer named Jason. He seemed genuinely curious about me. Thomas, I've heard so many amazing things about you from Rebecca. I can't believe you're actually joining our team. Jason spoke excitedly, flashing a friendly grin. I couldn't help but chuckle awkwardly at his energy. Those stories are probably exaggerated. No way. If Rebecca's praising you, that means something. I'm still pretty new, so I'd love to learn as much as I can from you. His enthusiasm made me smile without even realizing it. Thanks, Jason. That means a lot. Let's do our best together. Absolutely. Looking forward to working with you. I extended my hand, and we exchanged a firm handshake. At that moment, I truly felt it. At my last company, aside from Mr. Robinson and a couple of direct reports, hardly anyone acknowledged my work. But here, in this new environment, I could feel my experience and skills being recognized. A few days passed since I started working with Jason and Rebecca. As we continued our work, I suddenly paused, my eyes fixed on a section of code on my screen. The core of this system was built on a technology I had once developed on my own. Now, it was being reborn, shaped and refined by a new team in a new place. Jason, about optimizing this part. I think we need a more efficient algorithm here. What do you think? Yeah, I see what you mean. Jason leaned toward his screen, typing and thinking as he responded. You're right. The current processing is a bit heavy. Hang on. I've got a few ideas. He quickly started revising the code, and as I watched, I saw a spark of potential in him. Even in the short time we'd worked together, he was already showing impressive skill. That works. Nicely done, Jason. Thanks, but seriously, this whole program is amazing. The fact that you created it, I really respect that. You'll be doing things like this in no time too, Jason, I answered lightly. But deep down, I meant it. As I appreciated Jason's efficiency, I began reviewing the revised code. Thomas, can you take a look at this? Just then, Rebecca turned to me, displaying some data analysis results on her monitor. I leaned over to examine the screen closely. Sure. What's up? The recommendation algorithm based on user behavior patterns is performing even better than we expected so far. Test results show it's nearly 20% more accurate than our existing system. That's impressive, Rebecca. Sounds like we're on track for release. Thanks, but it's really thanks to the original technology you developed. We just optimized it. Even so, the project's come this far because of you and Jason. Thank you both. I turned to them with genuine gratitude. As the release date for the new system we had been developing drew near, I decided, encouraged by those around me, to file for a patent on the system. Alongside that, I approached Mr. Carrington, the president of my current company, with a request. So, what is it you wanted to talk to me about? Yes. If I have your approval, I'd like to reach out to 2 former team members I trusted from my previous job. Now that we've patented the system and they can no longer use it, it will be a significant blow to my old company. I see. Understood. Go ahead. Mr. Carrington looked mildly surprised, but quickly nodded in agreement. I'll leave it in your hands, Thomas. We're still short on staff ourselves. If you can bring them on board, they'll be a tremendous asset. Thank you so much, Mr. Carrington. I bowed deeply, grateful for his support and allowing me to bring them over without hesitation. Then, a few days later, the office door opened, and I saw two very familiar faces. Thomas, it's been a while. Yeah, it really has. It was David and Olivia. Seeing them running toward me with big smiles, I couldn't help but smile back. There really was something special about these two. Thomas, I can't believe we get to work together again. I'm really happy. Me too. I never thought a day like this would come. David and Olivia, with the two of you here, I know this project will go well. I'll be counting on you, so let's do this together. Of course. I'm just glad to be working under you again, Thomas. It's the most fulfilling kind of work for me. Thank you, both of you. I bowed my head deeply, filled with sincere gratitude. Being able to work with them again truly made me happy. With a certainty that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we could overcome them, I renewed my resolve to begin again. The new system we had developed was successfully patented and officially released. It performed remarkably well and quickly became a major topic within the industry. Meanwhile, just as I had predicted, my former company descended into chaos. One day, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Seeing the name flash across the screen, I let out a quiet sigh. Daniel. Taking a breath, I pressed the call button. Hello. Thomas. I'm sorry. It was my fault. Please, I'm begging you, come back. Without that system, the company eyes. Daniel's voice, which I hadn't heard in so long, was trembling with desperation. It's a little late for apologies, don't you think? I dismissed his plea without hesitation. There was no way he could understand everything I had endured, and I was certain this was just another hollow apology. Do you have any other business? If not, I'm hanging up. When I said that, Daniel fell silent for a moment, then replied in a low voice. I see. So that's how you feel. In that case, I have something in mind, too. What did you say? Sensing something ominous, I pressed him for an answer, but he said nothing more and hung up. Daniel, what are you planning? I had no idea what he was scheming, but I had no choice, so I kept moving forward. I kept telling myself over and over that moving forward was the only way. A few days passed, and though I tried to focus on work, Daniel's last words still lingered in the back of my mind. Then one day, I got another call from him. Seeing his name on the screen gave me a bad feeling, but I couldn't just ignore it. I answered. Hello. Thomas. Listen, can we meet and talk in person? His voice was cold, but with a strange air of confidence. What do you want to talk about? I replied flatly. There was a pause, and then he spoke, his voice lowered. You know that woman, Rebecca, right? The one who brought you into that company. She manages customer data. If you don't want that information leaked, you'll hand over the system. His words made my mind go blank. What are you talking about? How did you get that information? How I got it doesn't matter. What matters is that you either watch her suffer or you give up the system. Your choice. No. His voice was icy, and I was speechless. I was skeptical about how he could have access to the information Rebecca managed, but there was no way to verify the truth. If he was serious, something might happen to her. All right. A wise decision. Come to the office tomorrow night. Alone. Daniel spoke triumphantly before hanging up. I let out a long, heavy sigh. If I gave him the system, everything we had built could fall apart. But if it meant protecting Rebecca, I had no other choice. The next night, I made my way toward my former company's office with a heavy heart. Doubt and anxiety swirled inside me, but I kept telling myself that this was the only way to protect her. When I reached the familiar building and opened the office door, I immediately saw Daniel. Well, you came. He walked toward me slowly, wearing a sinister smile. You brought the system data just like we agreed, right? He sneered as he looked down at me. Yes, I brought it. I took out the USB drive I had brought and reached out to hand it to Daniel. But just then, a familiar voice rang out from behind. Thomas, you don't need to hand over that data. Startled, I turned around, and there stood Mr. Robinson, who was supposed to be hospitalized. Mr. Robinson. I stared at him in disbelief. Why are you here? I thought you were still in the hospital. Daniel's eyes widened, and his voice trembled. Mr. Robinson glanced at him briefly before walking toward me. The truth is, Thomas, before your former team resigned, they came to me. They told me everything of the unfair treatment you received, and Daniel's actions. David and Olivia reported it. Yes, that's right. After receiving their report, I decided to keep a close watch on Daniel's actions. Originally, I intended to let him continue a bit longer. But what he tried to do tonight was simply too much to overlook. So I requested special permission to leave the hospital and came here myself. Mr. Robinson gave a gentle smile, though on closer look, his complexion was clearly quite pale. Mr. Robinson, please don't push yourself too hard. No. Just for tonight, let me overdo it a little. Thomas, I'm truly sorry I couldn't be there when you needed someone most. No, don't say that. I shook my head quickly as Mr. Robinson bowed deeply in front of me. Even after a long pause, he remained bowed, then slowly raised his head and turned toward Daniel. Daniel, your behavior is unacceptable. What you've done has brought disgrace upon this company. Mr. Robinson, wait. Daniel was at a loss for words, clearly panicked. Thomas, I am really sorry. I'll give you a formal apology later. For now, Daniel, we need to have a serious conversation. Mr. Robinson gave me one final deep bow, then shot Daniel a stern look before leading him away toward the president's office. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I bowed deeply as I watched them disappear down the hallway. It wasn't over yet, not completely, but at the very least, I had protected Rebecca. Sometime later, after work, I found myself sitting with Rebecca again, back at the same bar from that night. We sat side by side at the counter, watching the amber whiskey swirl gently in our glasses. I hesitated for a moment before speaking. Hey, remember that situation with Daniel? The one about your customer data, the one where he tried to blackmail you using my name. Yeah, that one. Turns out it was all just a bluff. I figured as much. Honestly, the moment you told me about it, I had a feeling. Rebecca chuckled softly and took a sip of her highball. After that whole incident, I reported everything to Rebecca right away. I thought I had handled it calmly, but judging by her reaction now, it seems I wasn't as composed as I believed. Sorry about that, I muttered, taking a sip of my own deliberately weak drink. Apparently, Daniel had found out, probably through social media, that Rebecca and I had known each other for years and used that to lure me in. He mentioned your name, and I guess I panicked a little. I'm sorry. Don't worry about it, really. Besides, I heard that your system can now be shared jointly between our company and Mr. Robinson's, right? That's great news. Yeah, it is. And Daniel. I heard he was fired after that. If our companies can keep working together from here on out, I really think we'll both grow stronger. No doubt about it, especially with the system you built. Rebecca smiled warmly and lightly tapped her glass against mine. To everything being resolved, finally. Cheers. I smiled and raised my glass as well. At last, it truly felt like everything that had happened had finally come to an end. Hey, Thomas, do you remember that thing from back in high school? Rebecca suddenly asked, her tone shifting. Just like that, our conversation naturally shifted from work to memories of the past. We really did some pretty impressive stuff back then, like building an app from scratch, just experimenting our way through it. Yeah, we were so into building things back then. Looking back now, Those days were some of the best. Totally. Just thinking about it still makes me smile. Rebecca's eyes softened with nostalgia, her smile warm and familiar. Her expression spread a quiet warmth through my chest. Then, suddenly, she turned toward me with a more serious look. The truth is, I've always liked you. Not just back then, even now. My heart skipped a beat, caught between surprise and something deeper. I couldn't say a word, just stared back at Rebecca, unsure how to respond. Rebecca, I'm sorry for saying this out of nowhere, but I just had to tell you. She looked away awkwardly, then finished the last of her highball in one swift motion. A quiet silence settled between us. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm really happy to hear that. Let's keep moving forward together. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she nodded firmly in response to my words. My words probably weren't eloquent, just as clumsy as ever, but I knew she understood how I felt. With that certainty in my heart, I made a promise to walk into the future together with her.
Don't claim that you are unaware of my father's identity. He is the U.S. branch's head. You're fired if you have any complaints. Then Yvonne hurled her glass's contents directly at me. Yvonne talked triumphantly as I stood there in amazement, beer dripping onto my t-shirt. How are you, Greg? I wiped my face and t-shirt with the towel that my secretary Michelle gave me. Richard, the chief of our U.S. branch, stood behind Yvonne, who was staring at us blankly, his face pallid and trembling. Please pardon us, Greg. Yvonne, I'm sorry to him. Right now. Unfortunately, you have been fired, as has your daughter. Yvonne and Richard yelled together. What? I acknowledge that my daughter made a mistake, so why am I also being fired? Richard angrily objected to my choice, his face devoid of color. I looked at Michelle, prepared to go over everything in detail. My name is Greg Thoron. I am 53 years old, and I own a firm that sells health foods. I grew up surrounded by nutritious foods because my parents were very health conscious. In college, I studied in nutrition with a particular emphasis on the nutritional content of Italian food. In order to further specialize in healthy meals, I obtained a master's degree after beginning my employment in a food company. In the end, I created a line of prepared meals inspired by Italian cooking and established a business to manufacture and sell these goods. The company grew as our nutrient-dense meals became more and more popular. 5 years ago, I made the decision to relocate our headquarters to Italy due to the growing number of foreign clients. I currently work in America, promoting the health benefits of wholesome Italian cuisine across the globe. I arrived in the United States for a work trip around the end of June. As president of our headquarters, I had been requested to address the new hires at the conclusion of their training. After a year of sweating in the sweltering U.S. weather, I was standing at the airport entry when I heard heels clicking. My longtime secretary, Michelle Ingram, was the source of that sound. Michelle, who appeared agitated, snatched up my bag while gasping for air. I apologize so much for keeping you waiting, Greg. I became stranded in traffic. Michelle sighed with relief as I took my luggage bag, and I grinned and told her it wasn't a huge deal. I was just experiencing the summer heat in New York. What if we went to a local cafe to cool off? Michelle usually worked at the Italian office where I was based. However, this time she had arrived in the U.S. ahead of me to oversee a project at our U.S. branch and was waiting for my arrival. Balancing her secretarial duties and overseeing the project must have been challenging. I suggested the cafe as a gesture of appreciation, but Michelle firmly declined. The welcome party for the new employees will be held at a hotel near our U.S. branch. I've booked a room for you there, so let's head over. You must be tired from the long journey, so please take some time to rest. Given that I had been quite busy recently, I indeed felt quite exhausted. Grateful for my secretary's concern for my well-being, I headed straight to the hotel that day. The next morning, after having breakfast at the hotel, I immediately sat down with Michelle for a meeting. Today, the new employees would undergo training at our U.S. branch until 5 p.m., then join a welcome party at this hotel starting at 6 p.m. At the end of the welcome party, I was scheduled to give a speech as the president of our headquarters. During our meeting, Michelle eyed my outfit and sighed deeply. "Greg, with all due respect, please don't wear that to the welcome party." "Is it really that bad?" "It's comfortable and easy to move in, though." "I dislike wearing stiff suits, so I usually work in a t-shirt and shorts unless it's a special meeting." I was thinking casually about changing clothes just before my speech at the party, but seeing Michelle's disapproving gaze, I promised to change in the waiting room before the speech. Before I knew it, it was past 5 p.m., and the hotel's lobby was filling up with new employees, all dressed in brand new suits. Michelle and I watched the scene from a couch in the lobby. "It's about time. I'll take my things to the waiting room." By the time I brought my suit and luggage from my room to the 20th floor venue, the welcome party had already started. After leaving my things in the waiting room, I looked around for Richard, the president of our U.S. branch, but he was nowhere to be found. Since Michelle wasn't in the venue either, I assumed they were having a meeting somewhere else. The venue was laid out buffet style, and the employees were all smiles at the sight of the feast. A few of the younger employees had slightly flushed cheeks, likely from the variety of alcoholic beverages available. As I stood by the wall observing the scene, a woman holding an empty wine glass walked up to me. "Hey, old man, can I get a refill on this wine?" "Huh? Are you talking to me?" The woman who had just addressed me in a sweet voice was Avon, the daughter of the president of our U.S. branch. She found my surprised expression amusing and burst into loud laughter. "You're a bit too drunk, aren't you? This is a company event, so you should know your limits," I tried to advise her. But Ivan suddenly linked her arm with mine. "You're quite charming, mister. Are you an employee here? I'll keep you company with some drinks," she said, grabbing 2 glasses of beer and pushing one into my hand. "You need to stop this. You should act more responsibly as a professional." When I sternly lectured her, Yvonne's eyes narrowed and she let out a high-pitched screech. "Are you refusing to drink with me? You've got some nerve lecturing me when I'm being so nice to an old guy like you. Do you even know who I am?" Then Yvonne threw the contents of her glass right in my face. Beer dripped onto the t-shirt I was wearing, and as I stood there in shock, Yvonne spoke triumphantly. "Don't tell me you don't know who my dad is. He's the top of the U.S. branch. If you have any complaints, you're fired." The surrounding employees began to stare at us, murmuring in confusion. "My dad will do anything I say. If you want to apologize, now's your chance." Yvonne's arrogant attitude completely overwhelmed me. The smell of beer filled my nostrils, and I could barely breathe. "Give me a break. I may not look like it, but I'm an executive at this company. It's weird for an executive to show up to a company event in a t-shirt and shorts. Come up with a better line next time." It was my fault for showing up to the event dressed so casually. Seeing me slump my shoulders, Yvonne pointed at me and laughed loudly. Amid the commotion, I heard 2 hurried footsteps approaching. "Greg, are you okay?" Michelle handed me a towel, and I wiped my face and t-shirt. "I'm fine, don't worry. I have a change of clothes." Yvonne stared at our exchange with a blank expression, while Richard, the president of our U.S. branch, stood beside her, trembling with a pale face. "Greg, please forgive us. Yvonne, apologize to the CEO now." "When you say CEO, you mean my dad, right? Is this guy also a president of some company?" Ignoring her father's scolding, Yvonne clapped her hands in delight. For some reason, she was gazing at me with a dreamy expression. Eventually, Yvonne wobbled over to me. "Dad, don't you think this old man and I make a perfect match? Since I'm the president's daughter, it only makes sense if he's a president too." Her brazen stare made me feel like I was being evaluated, and to be honest, it was uncomfortable. Michelle, looking visibly annoyed, stepped in front of Yvonne. "You're being disrespectful. Know your place." I gently patted Michelle's shoulder to calm her down, but Yvonne pouted and argued back. "I'm the president's daughter. You're the one being disrespectful. I just want to get to know this old man better, so don't get in my way." "Yvonne, stop it. You're being disrespectful to Greg." Richard forcefully pushed his daughter's head down, and he apologized deeply as well. "What the heck? Dad always listens to me, so why now?" Yvonne complained, clearly unhappy with being forced to bow. I was thoroughly exasperated and let out a big sigh. "Raise your heads." At my words, both of them slowly lifted their heads. Yvonne, still not grasping the situation, glanced nervously between me and Richard. "Yvonne, sorry to disappoint you, but I'm Greg Thornton, the CEO of the company you're about to work for. Did you know our headquarters is in Italy? I believe that was covered during your training." Yvonne's face, which had been flushed red from alcohol, turned pale in an instant. "Oh no." Realizing she had made a big mistake, Yvonne quickly covered her mouth, but it was already too late. Michelle, standing beside me, was glaring at Yvonne with a fierce expression. "I'm sorry, Greg. You were just so charming, I couldn't help myself. Being complimented is not something I mind." Yvonne, thinking she was forgiven, brightened up, but her face froze when she noticed my cold stare. "However, as I keep saying, even though this is a social event, it's still part of your job. In the future, you'll find yourself in situations where alcohol is served. If you continue to behave like this, it will reflect poorly on our company. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Yvonne listened to my words with a solemn expression and nodded her head vigorously in response. "My daughter deeply regrets her actions. I beg you to be lenient." I knew Richard doted on his daughter, but if he truly cared about her future, sometimes a firm lesson is necessary. "Unfortunately, both you and your daughter are fired." Richard and Yvonne screamed in unison. "What? Sure, my daughter made a mistake, but she didn't commit a crime. Why am I getting fired too?" Richard, his face pale, fiercely protested my decision. I glanced at Michelle, indicating that I was about to explain everything in detail. Understanding my intent, Michelle quickly pulled out a tablet from her bag and handed it to me. I gratefully took it and began reviewing the report on Yvonne. Seeing my furrowed brow as I looked at the screen, Richard nervously asked, "Greg, is something wrong?" "Yvonne, you graduated from a prestigious women's university, didn't you?" Yvonne, surprised by the sudden mention of her alma mater, responded confidently. "Yes, I graduated top of my class from a well-known university. My thesis was highly regarded, and I received the Dean's Award." Her polished response reminded me of a job interview, and I couldn't help but chuckle internally. "I've received reports that your thesis wasn't actually written by you." Yvonne's face turned pale, and Richard stood there with his mouth hanging open in shock. "In fact, back in the new hire season, a professor from Yvonne's university contacted our headquarters in Italy directly." Michelle, who had handled the professor's call, now spoke sternly to Yvonne, her eyes fixed on her. "It seems Yvonne barely attended classes at university. She barely earned enough credits to graduate, and she even boasted about buying her thesis. I imagine your father spent quite a bit of money on that, didn't he?" Hearing that Yvonne had been hired by her father's company, the professor felt compelled to warn me, the CEO, by contacting me directly. I was shocked when Michelle first told me about it. Richard had always boasted about how his daughter was outstanding and would make him proud anywhere. Yvonne not only skipped classes, but also disrupted them by talking loudly with her friends when she did attend. One of her professors even said that it might have been better for the mental well-being of her classmates if Yvonne hadn't shown up at all. With a student like that, it would normally be recommended to drop out immediately. However, Richard had made large donations to the university to keep them from taking action against his daughter's irresponsible behavior. The donations were so significant that no one dared to criticize Yvonne's attitude. The professor was worried that if Yvonne joined her father's company, her spoiled behavior would only escalate. Sadly, his warnings went unheeded, and as a result of Yvonne's tantrum, I ended up with beer thrown in my face. I'm grateful to the professor for having the courage to reach out to me, which prepared me for what happened. Now that Ivan's troublesome college behavior had been brought up, she was glaring at Michelle with an angry expression. It doesn't matter anymore. My dad always told me that having money is a kind of talent, too. Hearing her excuse, Michelle, usually calm, clicked her tongue in annoyance. It's a common sight in our Italian office, but Ivan looked shocked and wide-eyed. Dad, she just clicked her tongue at me. Fire her right now. Richard glanced at Michelle, but quickly looked away. I could sympathize because I've often found Michelle's intimidating demeanor pretty terrifying myself. Realizing that her father, who always stood up for her, wasn't going to help this time, Ivan finally broke down in tears. But I've already apologized. Firing me is so unfair. There, while Richard hurried to comfort Yvonne, Michelle's gaze remained stern and unyielding. Yvonne, now drunk and emotional, wasn't making much sense. It was like watching a little girl throw a tantrum. I decided it was time to end the spectacle before it affected the new employees around us. I have a speech to give shortly. Let's talk in more detail after. Richard seemed deeply frustrated about being fired. He gritted his teeth and hung his head down, along with Yvonne. I told Richard to meet me in the hotel conference room after the reception, then walked away with Michelle. Back in the waiting room, I quickly changed into my suit. I hadn't shown up in casual clothes expecting anything like this, but today I was thankful for my relaxed attire. However, Yvonne had taken one look at me and decided I couldn't possibly be an executive. As Michelle had suggested earlier, I resolved to dress more appropriately from now on. Michelle looked at me with concern and quickly bowed her head as soon as I finished changing. I should have handled the situation more calmly earlier. My apologies. In our Italian office, it's common to have heated discussions with employees. When Michelle first joined, she often found herself overwhelmed and in tears after arguing with foreign colleagues. She wasn't used to strongly asserting her opinions in the U.S. But now, Michelle has earned the respect of those around her. Everyone seeks her out for advice and walks away looking satisfied. You've really grown strong, Michelle. When I muttered this, Michelle blushed bright red. Finally, it was time for my speech. It seemed most of the new employees hadn't noticed the earlier commotion by the window. I smiled and greeted everyone as I scanned the room. At the very back of the hall, Yvonne stood alone, her face swollen from crying. After finishing my speech, I descended from the stage to a round of applause. I quickly collected my belongings and headed toward the conference room that Michelle had reserved for us. Reflecting on what I needed to do, I felt a renewed sense of determination. The conference room was set up with a computer, drinks, and some light snacks. Since I hadn't eaten due to the earlier commotion, I gratefully helped myself. An hour had passed since the reception ended. A soft knock on the door signaled the arrival of Michelle, Richard, and Yvonne. As soon as they entered, Richard slid to the floor in a gesture of deep apology. Greg, I sincerely apologize for everything that happened. Yvonne, fidgeting, her head down weakly, said, I'm so sorry. This won't happen again, so please forgive me. Yvonne seemed more sober now, and her apology was more professional. I silently observed the two, and Richard cautiously glanced up at my expression. I smiled at Richard and encouraged him to take a seat. Richard and Yvonne exchanged relieved looks and let out a sigh of relief. Yvonne, earlier you mentioned firing me. It's a bit strange for the president of a subsidiary to fire the president of the parent company, don't you think? Sensing the tension easing, Yvonne leaned back in her chair and crossed her legs. Oh, Greg, you're too much. Please dismiss that as the ramblings of a drunk. Exactly. You're going to take back that declaration, right? Their arrogance was becoming increasingly apparent, and I was growing more frustrated with them. They seemed to think my declaration about firing them was just a bluff. Greg, while it's true Yvonne had some issues in college, she's actually a good, honest girl. I've even enrolled her in Italian classes so she can eventually assist you at the Italian headquarters. Richard glanced at Michelle and then flashed me a smile. And now that we've had the chance to meet your top secretary, Michelle, I hope you'll keep Yvonne in mind for future opportunities. I was exasperated by Richard's suggestion and Yvonne's confident smile. Why on earth would I bring a clearly problematic person like Yvonne to the headquarters? Moreover, someone as arrogant as Yvonne would never be able to handle the demanding role of a COO secretary. It seemed Richard was so blinded by his love for his daughter that he couldn't see her true nature. Michelle, who had earlier felt ashamed for losing her composure, was now standing silently without any reaction. Yvonne, encouraged by her father's suggestion, leaned forward with excitement. Greg, wouldn't you prefer someone young and talented like me as your secretary? I could even take care of your personal needs. Their misunderstanding had snowballed into something absurd, and I found myself at a loss. I needed to correct this, for Michelle's sake. First, Michelle is exceptional at her job. On top of that, she's so presentable that I'm never embarrassed to take her anywhere, and she's got a strong tolerance for alcohol, never changes color. Upon hearing that, Michelle quickly cleared her throat. Apparently, the comment about her drinking prowess was unnecessary. What I mean is, there's no one who could replace her, and I'm all set in my personal life. So, Yvonne, you're mistaken about that too. I heard someone gulp nervously. Before I knew it, Yvonne had straightened up as well. I tried to speak in a calm voice as I began to explain things one by one. I'm not going to retract what I said about firing you. Both Richard and Yvonne looked utterly shocked. It seemed they couldn't grasp what I was saying. First of all, you threw beer on me and acted rudely at the reception. There were witnesses, so there's no denying it. Yvonne, her face now pale, lowered her head. And according to testimony from your university professor, you didn't take your studies seriously. It shouldn't come as a surprise that my excellent secretary spoke to your classmates as well. The moment I mentioned speaking with her college friends, Yvonne turned even paler and began to tremble. When I asked Michelle to report what she had found, more of Yvonne's misdeeds came to light. Introduced by your professor, I spoke with some of your peers over the phone. Apparently, you had 4 students expelled simply because you didn't like them. Richard's face was filled with genuine shock. It seemed this was news to him. Yvonne, is that true? He grabbed Yvonne's shoulders and demanded an answer, but she avoided his gaze. Michelle continued speaking. Some of your followers were in tears, saying they stayed close to you out of fear that they'd be forced to leave school if they didn't. Yvonne's followers apparently begged Michelle not to report their wrongdoings to their employer. When I heard that, the phrase "what goes around comes around" came to mind. Even if these truths never came to light, Yvonne would have had to face the consequences eventually. Right now, Yvonne is beginning to face those consequences. For your own sake, Yvonne, I strongly suggest you sincerely apologize to those you've wronged. Yvonne, her shoulders slumped, nodded repeatedly at Michelle's words. She likely never imagined she'd be confronting her foolish past at such a moment. Yvonne's arrogance was gone, and she seemed to be ashamed of her previous actions. Yvonne, I told you I was firing you because I care about your future. When I spoke gently, Yvonne looked up at me, her eyes brimming with tears. When you faced trouble, you always relied on your father to fix it. This isn't healthy. You need to learn to navigate life on your own. Yvonne listened to me intently. Even though she was still on probation, being fired could stain her record, but it should serve as a catalyst for her to reflect on her actions. However, next to the now dejected Yvonne, Richard appeared to be growing more irritated. When I paused, Richard suddenly slapped Yvonne hard across the face. You've brought shame to me. You're a disgraceful daughter. From today on, we're done. Yvonne held her cheek, her eyes wide in disbelief as she looked at Richard. Being disowned by the father she had always depended on was something Yvonne likely never imagined. Michelle quickly reacted, placing a cold, damp handkerchief on Yvonne's cheek. Richard snorted in disdain, and I repeated what I had said earlier. Richard, I also said you're fired. Yes, but you mentioned that this was an issue concerning my daughter, didn't you, Greg? Now that I've severed ties with her, there's no need to fire me as well, right? Richard tried to lighten the mood with a cheerful tone, clearly trying to appease me. It was obvious he still didn't understand my true intentions. Firing you, Richard, has nothing to do with Yvonne. Let me explain. Using the projector in the conference room, I displayed some documents on the screen. Richard, who had been staring blankly at the screen, suddenly jumped up in a panic. Greg, how did you get your hands on that? He seemed desperate to avoid anyone seeing the document, quickly shutting off the projector while groaning in frustration. Seeing how agitated Richard was, I knew it was time to reveal the truth. The reason I returned to the U.S. was to gather solid evidence of your embezzlement, Richard. Last year, suspicions of embezzlement began to arise after a report from the accounting department at our U.S. branch. Since I personally review all revenue-related figures, I knew there were no issues there. What caught the accounting department's attention were discrepancies in the employee savings program that I hadn't noticed. Our company allows employees to automatically save a portion of their salary starting in their second year. To withdraw their savings, employees must either wait for the maturity date they set or go through the accounting department. It's a popular system because it helps employees accumulate significant savings over time. 3 years ago, one of our top accountants noticed irregularities in the employee savings deposits and withdrawals and reported them to the accounting manager. The manager's investigation revealed that the head of the accounting department was manipulating the employee savings. The manager kept a close watch, and by last November, we had confirmed that Richard was the mastermind behind the embezzlement. Richard, you were slowly moving money into your personal account to avoid detection. The head of the accounting department, who was transferred 3 years ago, testified that he assisted you in the embezzlement under your orders. Naturally, he was fired. As of yesterday, the head of the accounting department had been crying and insisting that he didn't personally benefit from the embezzled funds, but his betrayal of trust couldn't be erased. After consulting with our company's legal counsel, we decided he would also be held accountable. Was it for gambling or investments? Initially, it seems you were able to repay the funds you withdrew, but currently there's a shortfall of about $30,000 in the employee savings. When we traced back 3 years, the initial amounts Richard embezzled were small. However, the amounts grew over time, and Richard eventually pocketed $45,000. Only $15,000 of that has been repaid. Since the projector was no longer usable, I handed Richard a stack of paper documents. Richard took the documents with a bitter expression and threw them on the floor. Do you have any proof? It seems like the accounting department is trying to frame me. I'm innocent. Richard, his eyes bloodshot, loudly proclaimed his innocence. His sudden outburst caused Devin to flinch and shrink back in fear. We finally obtained proof. While the head of accounting usually managed the transactions to avoid detection, 3 months ago, Richard, you went to the bank yourself, didn't you? Richard's eyes darted around wildly, and sweat poured down his forehead as I mentioned the event 3 months ago. The banker remembered you, and to be sure, we checked the security camera footage. It clearly shows you, Richard, at the bank. Perhaps feeling overconfident from getting away with it for so long, Richard was caught on video boldly going through the transaction. Seeing Richard's smug face on the screen made my anger surge. The employee savings plan was created with the intention of benefiting our employees, and the amount saved was a testament to their trust in the company. I could never forgive Richard for laughing while trampling on both my feelings and the trust of our employees. I had asked Michelle to investigate Ivan's background, and I was planning to handle this matter personally. However, when Michelle heard about my anger, she took it upon herself to gather the evidence of Richard's misconduct in the U.S. "Greg, please focus on your work. I will definitely secure the proof." Her strong words were a great comfort to me. Perhaps not realizing how thoroughly we had investigated, Richard collapsed to his knees on the floor. As he slumped there, I directed my words at him, filled with all the emotions I had been holding back. "You failed not only as a manager, but also as a father. Don't ever underestimate my company." Seeing my anger firsthand, Richard's face turned pale as he trembled and hastily prostrated himself on the floor. Rubbing his forehead against the floor, he begged for forgiveness in a pitiful display. "I'm so sorry." To Ivan, this man was likely a source of pride. Despite the humiliation in sight before her, Ivan stared at her father's groveling figure with a sorrowful expression. Afterward, Richard left the conference room with Ivan in tow. Michelle contacted the company's legal counsel to handle the situation with Richard moving forward. As I stared up at the ceiling of the conference room, I reflected on what had been a long day. Sinking into my chair, exhausted, I pondered the future of our U.S. branch. I must have fallen asleep because Michelle had to shake me awake to get me back to my hotel room. Later, Richard admitted to the embezzlement and was arrested. He largely confessed to his crimes, and the $3,000 he embezzled is expected to be repaid in court. Richard was sentenced to 2 years in prison. During the trial, Richard recounted how he came to commit embezzlement. He had used most of his assets to make donations to Ivan's university and was then advised by a friend to invest. Driven by financial anxiety, he foolishly believed in the baseless promise that his money would double through these investments. He even bribed the former head of accounting using company funds to invest without raising suspicion. "I intended to return the money from my profits," he claimed until the end. But the judge saw through him. Knowing that Richard had been living a lavish lifestyle, the judge remarked that if he had truly intended to return the money, he should have forfeited his own salary. Naturally, his claim didn't sway the judge, and he was sentenced to prison. Richard had always told Ivan that having money is a kind of talent. But now, he had lost not only his wealth, but also his reputation and his daughter's respect. He was a pitiful man, stripped of everything. The former head of accounting also faced trial and received a 1-year prison sentence. Though he hadn't directly stolen money from the company, his involvement in the embezzlement meant he couldn't escape punishment. Ivan, meanwhile, was fired during her probationary period and had to start her job search all over again. Finding this process bothersome, she reputedly begged her former college friends to help her get a job at their companies. When they learned her father was no longer a company president, they turned on her, hurling insults as payback for the way she had treated them. When Michelle received an email from Ivan expressing her resolve to relearn how to build relationships, I couldn't help but laugh. She's currently living alone in a small apartment, experiencing poverty for the first time in her life. I plan to keep an eye on her from a distance, hoping that her part-time job experience will help her reintegrate into society. With Richard's dismissal, I'm now responsible for managing both the headquarters and the U.S. branch until a new president is appointed. We need to hold an executive meeting and quickly decide on the next president. There's a lot to do, but I'm determined to tackle each issue one at a time. To prepare for the board meeting, Michelle and I stopped by the U.S. branch. "I'm putting you through a lot, Michelle." Michelle, who was organizing the U.S. branch's documents, furrowed her brows, unsure of what I was referring to. "If that's how you feel, you should invite me to the hotel bar instead of a cafe. And you know I can't handle even a drop of alcohol." The truth is, I'm so sensitive to alcohol that even the smell can make me feel sick. However, on the day Ivan threw beer on me, my mind stayed unusually sharp while I worked to expose Richard's wrongdoing. Maybe I didn't get drunk because I was so focused. Apparently, Michelle found me sprawled out, fast asleep in the conference room later on. I don't drink, but I'll treat you to some expensive liquor. I'm counting on you from now on, too. Michelle unusually gave me a big smile and nodded happily.